Hey everyone, welcome to the Giving Town podcast. I'm Danielle Roberts, your host. This episode is going to be a little bit different than other episodes that we do. As I always mention in each episode, that this podcast is brought to you by the Joyful Roberts Group, which is my team and my family, and that is who I have the honor of interviewing today. So what we're going to be doing today, we're not a nonprofit, but John and Karen, who are my mom and dad, work with a lot of seniors here in town. And with that, there's a lot of senior resources available. And when I say seniors, I mean elderly seniors. So not just once you turn 55, your life doesn't automatically change overnight. But one of the things we found working in seniors real estate is that there are a lot of people who are alone, who are isolated, who have a lot of challenges they face. And sometimes it's them, sometimes it's their adult children who have to manage a lot of this. So we've just seen with the amount of seniors we've worked with that there are so many resources available that people are not aware of. And that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. And John and Karen are mostly going to be talking about as I ask them questions, just so that whether it's you personally listening or someone that you know who is an elderly senior, we are just really passionate about making sure that people are not alone, that they know the resources available to them and don't have to go through things alone. So John, Karen, also mom and dad, thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to this episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So before we get started, can you each share a little bit about your journey working with seniors? What got you into this in the first place?
Go ahead.
I've been working with seniors since I was in high school. So I was trying to think, who was the person that first said, hey, have you ever thought about volunteering at one of the senior communities? And I can't think of who it was, but I remember going and being challenged in so many areas. And not having grown up with my grandparents, I didn't know really how to communicate or act around seniors who were like 60 years older than me. But as I stayed with them and worked through it, the people working there helped me understand them better. It ended up becoming like a lifelong passion. So through college, the college I went to, we could adopt a grandparent, which was fun. Taught her how to swim.
Oh, wow.
In her 80s, yeah. Then as our family grew, we adopted a grandma from church and helped her to get to church. And then later in my career, I was able to actually work in a senior community. So it's just been something that felt very comfortable, loving and caring about people who really love and care about you back. It's really very interesting. It's a two-way relationship. It's not just like you're giving and they are so grateful and appreciative. It's just been a very special part of my life.
It's really interesting because for somehow, and maybe you told me and I'd forgotten, I didn't know that you volunteered until today. And you'd mentioned that a couple minutes ago before we started, that you'd done this earlier in your career. Because I know that you'd gone from the wind farm to working with seniors in the senior community. So I just thought that was cool. And what a cool opportunity for us and my siblings that we got to experience. Grandma Drybread is what we called her. Yeah. Her name was Mary Drybread. So it's not a common last name. So anyway, but yeah, so getting to know her, it's just a unique thing that I don't think a lot of families get to experience that. And she was so kind and generous with the little she had. Yes. So then from there, how did you, what was your evolution into getting your seniors real estate specialist or specialty, I guess?
I think when I found out about it, we were talking about it, it just seemed a natural fit because that was just what I was coming out of. I might as well just walk right into it. So really the same field, just bringing on more, learn a lot about real estate, but the hard part of it is exactly the same. And training too. There's a lot of training from working in senior community that I brought right into real estate. So very important to understand how the mind ages. Yeah. Just for all of us, it gives us a lot more patience with each other, but definitely with working with seniors.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's funny thinking of Mary Drybread. I mean, there were several times throughout our marriage that Karen would want to help somebody, and my first selfish reaction was, okay, but it was always a very rewarding experience, helping her. I mean, she became part of the family, and it was just very nice to be able to help people. And, when Karen was working at the senior community in the Dalles, she was very passionate about the things that she was learning, the training that she would receive. And then for me, going through this in my own family with my parents, that, my brother who lives here in Portland, my parents are back in Missouri. And I started realizing and seeing firsthand there's a lot of special considerations when it comes to seniors. There's a lot of things that...
In what situation were specifically referring to?
So, well, when they had finally made a decision to move out to Oregon, and so we'd been trying for years to get them to come out here, but everything familiar is back in Missouri. And so, my brother and I went through the process of, I guess I call him Uncle Gene, went through the process of setting up an estate sale. And I mean, there was just a lot of questions. What do we do with our stuff? And we had a place picked out in a senior community, and we had, the transportation, everything was lined up for them to move out here. And then, of course, my mom, Gurney's health went south, and it didn't work out. But,
well, I think an important consideration is that she had Alzheimer's too. So it's from 2020 to 2024 was the slow decline that's eventually led to the decision. It just ended up being too late.
Yeah. And that's really what, kind of my passion now is to help people understand that, we have a client right now who made the comment, I think the time's coming soon. And I just said, hey, do you think it really might be here now because of his wife's health?
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of stopped and realized, you're right. So.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what all of this is about, is because it's been really interesting for me as a relatively younger adult. I grew up thinking that adults had it all together. Once you got older, you just kind of had everything figured out. And I realized both first and second hand, that's not true. And as you age, there's no manual for how to age, really. And your body stops working. Sometimes your mind stops working. If it's someone you love, and, going through watching your parents go through something like that is extremely difficult. And you maybe have your own family, your own career you're working with, and you're trying to navigate, how do I take care of my parents? How do I take care of this person I love? And every single person goes through something like that. Unless you lose your parents young, or in rare cases, someone is extremely vigorous and full of energy until they're in their late 80s, and then, they pass. But for many, many people, they have to go through that extremely difficult process of they themselves declining in health or watching a parent decline in health.
Right.
And that's, again, the whole purpose of this episode is to help people know that you don't have to go through that alone, whether you're the adult, whether you're the child. And so thank you both for sharing about that. And Karen, you actually had, I think one of the very first things, and I don't remember if you had just gotten your, actually, before I say that, can you share about what is a seniors real estate specialist? We use that term SRES. John, could you share what that actually means?
Yeah, so SRES, Seniors Real Estate Specialist, it's a certification that's kind of within the realm of being a real estate broker. And so it's additional education and training on how to work with different generations. And a lot of it is education about the differences between the seniors, the baby boomers, and the silent generation, who are now in their, the 80s, because they're like 1925, and so they're older.
1925 to 45 or something around that range. Yeah.
And so, and there's just a lot of differences. And so what the training is about is how to work with seniors. There's technological challenges. There's there's a different mindset with different generations. So you
Yeah.
hear about the millennials are this and the baby boomers are like that. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you can't, just automatically stereotype everybody, but there are some very real generalities that you can apply. And so that's what the seniors real estate specialist training is all about.
Yeah. But Karen, I wanted you to share what are the aspects of your story. And again, I don't remember if it was before or after you got your SRES designation, but there was a lady that lived out on the south end of town, or I guess on the outskirts of town, that we'd gotten connected to. Can you share about that and kind of how that drove you to really pursue this part with more passion?
Sure. Yeah. And it's one of the stories that are heartbreakers. So we have great stories and we have sad stories, and that's just, I think, part of life. I think the part that's most important is as we go through. At that point of time, I had met a lady who was isolated. She would talk on the phone, but she wouldn't let you in her home. So I go to her home, and no, she wasn't going to let me in, but at least I tried. I knocked, and I'd let her know I was coming, but she really needed professional help. And I think as we've progressed, one of the things, based partly on my history with working in the senior community and the training on Alzheimer's and just other training that we have taken, that you need somebody that you trust, that you can refer people who are struggling emotionally. So this lady she wanted to move, but she couldn't move because emotionally she couldn't let go. She couldn't move to the next step. And we find people often get like that. And I encourage families when they're up against that, where they're on the fence or teeter-totter, I want to move, I can't move, that they should bring in a professional. And Lacey Plasker was the professional for me. It just changed my whole heart, because my heart was just breaking over this one person, because she ended up dying alone at home because she wouldn't let anyone in. And that should not happen. And so Lacey is... she's a behavioral health specialist here in Yamhill County and has the resources. The professionals are out there. And I think you always hope, if we would have brought somebody in early enough, it could have made a difference. And that's where I stand now, is bring somebody in as soon as you can. As you're seeing something going on, they're trained to have easy conversations, and it could change the whole course of someone's life.
Yeah, and I think what John mentioned too, with the differences in generations, there's many times a desire to be very independent. People had to do a lot, and they don't want to rely on anyone else. So I say that because there's definitely the acknowledgement that sometimes it's hard, and you can't force someone to get help, even if they really need it. And I feel like in other volunteering I've done, I've noticed that's one of the most challenging things is, as much as someone needs help, they still have to be able to take that step and say yes. And that's something we still deal with. We have clients who they don't want help, even though we know they need it. And we have to manage that and have those hard conversations. So I want to move into some of the specific resources. That's, again, kind of what a lot of this is about, that we could share. Because one of the main things that we do, and you guys, even though all three of us are seniors real estate specialists, you're much closer to it, being closer in age, and just knowing a lot more people in that stage of life too. So you're kind of the ones that people go to. I got my certification just so that I wouldn't be the only one without it. But you guys all of us end up doing a lot of connecting. We've kind of become known as, hey, we're like the seniors real estate team in town. And so people come to us to get connections, which is important. So let's just kind of go through some of those that maybe people are aware of. Some people probably are not aware of what's available.
Most important, I think most excited about, outside of having somebody who can help with the emotional part of, with, whether it's family or spouse, is a senior advisor. And until I was in real estate, I didn't know what a senior advisor was, but they're doing all the heavy lifting work of trying to find out where you're at and what your needs are and what's in the community that can help you in the sense of like living. So senior living communities. They also, though, are super educated just in asking basic questions about where your health is and your physical, your emotional needs. So they're kind of like a friendly step in the door. So whether you're actually going into senior living or you're just trying to explore, gee, what would that look like? They're paid by communities. And even if they don't have a contract with the community, they will refer whoever is best for the seniors they're working with.
Yeah. Just
great resource.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say too, every scenario is different for a senior. Each client has a unique set of circumstances and a different story. So the best resource I find is the people that we can connect them to. So, we do get together with them. We find out what their situation is. And then, some people may not be moving into a senior community. They may want to age in place. And even though that's not necessarily going to help us, it may be the best thing for them. So we connect them with resources to bring healthcare into the home.
Yeah.
And it's because it's very challenging for seniors to make a move sometimes. And it's kind of a way to get them thinking about, well, maybe I could stay in my home, but yet changes are still needed. And so, because a lot of times that's just a transitional stage until time does come, but they do then need to move into a senior community. So,
and I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people trust our team, but I think specifically you guys, is because they say, well, what's in it for you? You're real estate agents, and I don't want to sell my home. But I think for all of us, a huge part of what we do is serving the community, and we would much rather, if you don't need to move, we're not going to get paid, but if you don't need to move, then there's no point in doing it just so we can, make a sale. Like, we want you to have the resources you need to stay in place. And, eventually that comes back around. But I think the building up the trust within the community and people who trust us to know we're never going to pressure someone. You're never going to pressure someone into doing something they don't want to do, which is really important, because that's not always the experience people get with real estate professionals, and they can feel guarded of feeling, I need help, but I don't want to be pressured into doing something I don't want to do.
Right. Well, I saw it in my own family with my mother when we did have to move her into a memory care unit. But my father is still, for the most part, independent, still lives at home. So my brother and I, helped him bring in-home health care, and it's worked out great. He loves being at home. So.
And a couple of the other great advisors that we have really realized that if you don't have a financial advisor, having one to map out where you're at and where you're going to be, like, say you're going to live to 100 or say 90, whatever you think your family's average is, they give you that path so you can see, based on the money you have now, at this pace, will you have enough for senior living, in-home care, and kind of gives you some peace of mind. I feel that's kind of a hit and miss with using a financial advisor, and that's another great resource. They're not out to do anything but to help you have peace of mind and sleep at night. And I think
some are. And I think that's the thing, is having someone who specializes, who has the right heart in that. And that's, again, we've gotten connected with some really good ones who can help with that, because you want to make sure if you have a financial advisor, they're going to give you good advice. So one, senior advisors, like you mentioned, and I think you're right, that probably is a pretty powerful one that a lot of people aren't aware of, that they can really be a huge benefit, and you're not the one who has to pay them. They'll get paid by the community. And I think there's 8? Are there 8 communities in Newberg? I can't remember all of them. There's
the senior advisors.
No. Like senior living communities. So I don't remember the exact number.
Well, it depends if you're looking at independent living or assisted living,
right?
Memory care.
But even that designation, I don't think people are aware of independent living versus assisted versus memory care. But whether you're in Newberg or looking outside of Newberg, having a senior advisor who knows those communities really well. And we know them a little bit, and you guys know them a little bit, but having a senior advisor is probably one of the number one places to start. And then financial planning is important with that. Can you talk a little bit about estate planning and what people may not always consider when it comes to that, why it's important to have a good estate planner?
Yeah, in fact, we have a client now that the home's going to be sold, and it's still kind of in process, but because of some health complications, there's really the need for the home to be moved into a different structure, like a trust, so that the children can better manage the situation. And again, there's other circumstances in this particular case that makes that necessary, but that's the type of thing that you really want to understand when the time comes to sell. Is it best to just have it in the name of if it's an elderly parent, or should it be moved into a trust with perhaps some other assets? And it's always good to talk to an estate planning, an attorney or someone who can help with that, because that's their area of expertise.
Yeah. Another interesting one is insurance advisors. Can you share about that role? Because that's another one that's probably little known, but they can be a huge benefit to people navigating Medicare and all the different options.
Yeah, and it's again, with I'm just now. I mean, I'm going to be 65 this year, and so I'm just now entering into that stage of life of looking at Medicare and all of that, and so that's not my. I know very little about it right now, but I've already set up an appointment in a couple of months to talk to an advisor who's very well versed in it, and it's just one more aspect of that we can help seniors get connected to those people who are experts in their fields, because there's a lot of areas, and it can be overwhelming. That's part of what we try to do, is just say, hey, let's just look at this one thing for right now, and it's once it's simplified in their minds, you can move on to the next thing. But the ideal situation is to do that while you're prior to being in the midst of any type of crisis.
Yeah. Can you share some of the other local resources? I know we kind of have a list here. I'll let you kind of go through some of them.
Well, Senior Meals is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Working right here in Newberg out of the senior center. So if you're healthy and strong, you can volunteer. But if you're feeling you would like the assistance, they have healthy, wonderful meals. Volunteered there for quite a while and enjoyed that. And they were meals that you would actually eat.
And can you share about what that is and how that works, why it's important?
Well, I think sometimes as we get older, we don't understand how nutrition is still very important for our minds to function and for our bodies to function well. Especially mental health. We can't at times do the shopping and the cooking and all that. So having a warm meal brought to your house is basically what this senior meal is about. So you get one warm meal a day, and it runs Monday through Friday, but it's sometimes neglected, in the sense as you get older, you're like, oh, I'm not hungry, I'll just nibble on this or that. The other part about the senior center, though, is it's an opportunity to be out and visiting with people and meeting friends, and there's much to be said about socializing even as we age. So that person-to-person contact, and a couple of days a week you can go in there and sit down and have a meal too. So they have lovely activities, and that part is just about staying connected and having activities that you enjoy and meeting new friends.
Yeah. Yeah, the isolation piece is, I think, probably not well understood and maybe not well appreciated in the sense that people don't know how big of a deal it is. I think if you say he can't drive anymore, and or you just retire and you kind of become a recluse, that's very dangerous for your physical and emotional health. So having a place to go and be able to socialize is important, which is one of the reasons that I guess we advocate for moving into a senior living community. And maybe you could just share on that side. Maybe many people are resistant, but we have that conversation.
Oh, a senior community is not a nursing home.
Yeah.
The stigma of people in their 80s and 90s, they don't understand how it has changed over the last 4 decades. The competition is fierce between senior communities to be not only comfortable, warm, and inviting, but to have wonderful meals. Many of them employ chefs it's not just out of a can food, and they have activity directors. So you're walking into almost a vacation where you get to relax and meet people and find, you're always going to find common ground with somebody in one of these communities. Lovely people.
One of the things that we had talked about just a couple of minutes before we started was the idea that many of these people lived through many of them lived through the Depression, or at least their parents did. And so they have a mentality about money that makes them very resistant. Can you share what you were sharing about that?
Yeah, and I think, I look at my parents, they both, they went to college, they had a job, they had one job their entire life. That was it. And then they retired. And they've moved twice in 60 years. And that's very common in that generation of the silent generation. And baby boomers are a little more mobile, a little more versatile than that, but there's still that tendency to go and stay in one place. And that makes it harder. There's more of an emotional attachment to the home that you're in. You've put a lot of your own, sweat and tears into a home. You fixed it up. And so there's more of a connection to it. So more reluctance to leave. And one of the big questions is, even if someone is willing to move into a senior community, it's, well, what do I do with all this stuff? What do I do? How do I get rid of what I don't want, what I can't take with me? And so that's a challenge.
Yeah. Which I guess goes to another resource, is people who can help with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's actually downsizing. There's the people that is their job. They help you downsize and they help you move. And they help you if you're just needing to or maybe make your home more livable. Sometimes we collect so much that the home owns us. I think if you're not moving, sometimes downsizing can be hard. But we encourage people, we do it almost all the time. If you can pass things on to your children now while you're alive, do it. Don't hold on to something that you're going to give to them when you pass, because then they may not want it. At least now you know if they want it or not.
So beware, there's lots of things coming your way.
Yeah, I've started to get some of them.
But you might do. Yeah, but we do have the resources for both downsizing and then walking through that whole process of, if you're needing, if you're at a place where you are needing to move, bringing everybody together who would help make that decision, including the family.
Well, and there's downsizing for some, because a lot of seniors are wanting to, move out of a home that has stairs, for example, and move into a single level home. But they're still very independent otherwise. So, but to do that, they may be moving from a, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house into a, smaller 3-2. And so there's a lot of things they have to get rid of. For others, it may be they are moving into a senior community and they have an entire house full of belongings. And so there's estate sale professionals that we work with that come in and help them sort through everything. And they'll have, maybe an auction, online sale. There's lots of ways to do it. But the key, again, is that the resources are out there. And part of what we really enjoy is just connecting people to those resources to take away that feeling of being overwhelmed, of not knowing what to do.
Yeah, and we had one client, and there was just paralysis because there were so many things. And one of the people we like referring has a 1 hour free consultation. And they work, if you have family like out of state, they are in other states too. So I called her up, and she gave me a name of a lady in another state. And I said, clients sometimes become friends. And I said, really? She might just give you great ideas. If you don't want to hire her, it's just a 1 hour free consultation. After that hour, she hired her. And it was so nice because it took the weight of the decision. She made the decisions way easier and gave her options for, sometimes you might not need an estate sale. You just have a few large ticket items that you could sell on Marketplace. So she helped her with some different items like that. And I think that's the really nice thing to know is you're not always, many of the people who are helping seniors, really, they're willing to give you some of their time to help you get moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing you'd mentioned is, and I'm just kind of now framing it in my mind this way, that as you age, you're converting your health and your energy, hopefully, as long as you're saving well, into money. Now, obviously, there's life situations and things where that's not happening, but a lot of times you're working and saving money, and you get to a point where you can't do everything on your own. And that mindset shift is really challenging for people. And even, we've had conversations that you guys are in some ways going through this right now, that, okay, I don't want to do everything myself, even though I maybe technically could, but maybe I should hire someone else to help me. Like that you mentioned, some people feel I have to do all this myself, but there's people who specialize in doing just that. And if you lived extremely frugally your entire life, then you might be hesitant. You should expand on that, what you were mentioning earlier.
I was just laughing because today, just this afternoon, I hired someone to come over and climb up on my roof and look at, cleaning the moss, just routine maintenance. I was standing down there watching them on the roof thinking, wow, having been a building contractor and building and being up on roofs and re-roofing, I'm thinking, yeah, I think I'm through it. And I actually climbed up on the ladder, and I thought, if Karen saw me now, she'd probably get upset anyway. So
I didn't know where you were going to go with it. I didn't know if you were going to say, I can do this myself. I'm not going to have them do it.
Get out of the way. I can do better.
But to your point, there were, for many years, it was like, I can do this. I mean, anything related to a house I could do, and I did it for most of our remodels and
the deck on the house now.
Building the little subdivision and all that, so, but it's like, I kind of like being in a place where, I have the money and I can just pay someone else to take that risk or whatever. But it's hard for some to do that. I mean, have another, peer my age who recently was up on a ladder and he fell, and he hurt himself pretty badly. So, it's a mindset, and a shift that has to change, has to take place.
Karen, you made a comment. If you've been saving for a rainy day, it might be good to recognize that you might be in that rainy day.
Yeah, it might be the rainy day right now. Yeah. But all of us struggle with that. We save for things, and I think that's where a financial planner can come in. It's very useful because they can help you see you have money for this right now, and you still have your money that's making money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps having people from the outside. John is an engineer by degree, and we had moved a few times, so we had quite a few 401ks. And trying to line that up and see what was going on, we were losing sleep over it. We went to a financial planner, and I think one of the best things about we were walking away was like, wow, now we can sleep at night and know there is a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So transitioning from just the specific resources, what are some things you found that are really good things for people to know, whether as an elderly senior or as one who has family members who are elderly?
I think, I think of the dynamic with a senior is that it's usually, unless it's, someone who's a younger senior who's just making a move, like I mentioned before, downsizing to a smaller house, that's an easier situation to deal with. But when it's an older senior who may be needing to move because of a change in health or some other reason, what we try to do is just get everybody in the family, because there's always people on the periphery who are influencing decisions. It may be a child who now has a power of attorney. So one of the most important things is the communication, just getting everyone together, making sure everyone's on the same page, and including everybody in all the communication, because it's a lot more efficient. I think it makes everybody a lot more comfortable to do that.
And if I could interject here,
Yeah.
These are hard conversations. And I met a wonderful lady at one of the local senior communities, and she had a lovely booklet on how to have hard conversations. And after going to one of her presentations, I started researching that. There's a lot to sitting down with a family that you might not all be in the same, you may not all have the same opinion about what needs to happen to mom and dad. And one of the best things you can do with conversation is give each person a chance without being interrupted to share their point of view.
Sorry, just...
Yeah. Wait, guys. Where we interrupt each other and we think, let everybody share and validate what each person is saying. So if one of the best advices I think we can take to heart is, if we were that person, raised the way they were, went through their experiences, we might be saying the exact same thing they're saying. So if we look at it as like their opinion is valid, and once people start hearing each other, peers or family members, then there gives the groundwork to start making a plan. But if you don't, if you just start saying what you want to do, it might be hard to get to the plan. Hearing how everyone feels about it, and you may need a conversation just as siblings, or it might be the parents who are initiating it and they need to have it without their children. So a lot of dynamics there, but listening from the heart and giving place without that interruption really helps people be able to share and a plan to be made. And I want to say John and Daniel are great at that too. They're really they do well in hard conversations. They eat us shine. I love that.
And I think as we kind of get to the closing point here, obviously a lot of the work we do is specifically with downsizing. If you could briefly share some of the difficulties and ways you help people through that specifically when it comes to moving, all the different options there and how you counsel. I mean, you mentioned the 1 hour consultation. That's also something we do as a team, is the free 1 hour consultation. So like, what are some of the things that you help people walk through, and then how you kind of take people through the process?
Well, with downsizing specifically?
It could be downsizing. It could be moving into senior living. It could be aging in place. There's all the different options.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest key is getting together with them and getting a good understanding of what they want to do and what their ultimate goal is. For someone who, the downsizing piece seems to be a big obstacle for people because they've been accustomed to living in a home sometimes for decades with all of these, furnishings and belongings, and there's things that have been handed down generationally. So how do you handle that? And so, it as Karen mentioned before, there are people who are very experienced and just gifted in being able to help people walk through the process of making a decision of, what's a treasure and what's really something that it's been in your home for decades, but yet it's just a couch. It doesn't really, it's easy to get rid of that,
Yeah.
And so it's helping people just start to process I think sometimes it's the intimidation comes with knowing that you have to start thinking about these things. And so just having someone, I don't want to say hold your hand, 'cause it sounds a little disparaging in a way, but it's really just walking beside them and helping them make those decisions.
And as you mentioned, Daniel, the 1 hour consultation, that and having a senior advisor. So having those two in hand, they talk with us, they talk with senior advisor, so they have knowledge. So with the understanding, sometimes we can be overwhelmed with thinking we need to make decisions when people already have a path. We already know how to get people from one place to another. They tell us, hey, this is what I want to do. We can bring in the people and help make that happen. And doing it, I think that is, that would be the greatest advice we could help people is don't wait. Even if you work in senior living, you may know your community, but these senior advisors, they know all the communities. And they also bring in a lot of extra expertise.
And they can help guide you through the conversations.
Yeah.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
And it's really nice. I mean, we think about this as the Giving Town podcast, and the people that we interact with, I can't think of anyone who really doesn't have a heart for seniors. Their heart is really to help people. And that's just so nice to be a part of that.
Yeah, Newberg is a wonderful community for seniors to be in.
Yeah. And the last question I always ask people is, being involved in Newberg and in your roles here, to even kind of talk about a lot of the things that you guys do in your involvement. But what are some things that give you, or what's the number one thing that gives you hope for the future of Newberg?
The people.
Yeah.
The people. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
wonderful people. Yeah, it's just, this is a very unique community. And if you grew up here, you may not know how unique it is and how special it is. But it's a gem when it comes to people who really care.
Yeah, I see that too. And I've been, being a part of the chamber and being involved in activities in other communities associated with that, and seeing the different groups within other communities, city management versus the chamber versus, their DMO or whatever it might be. This is a community where people really do work together and support each other. And that's what gives me hope. Mm-hmm. And it's just a blessing to be a part of a town like this.
Yeah. Well, I'm realizing that we probably should turn this into a blog and have it on our website for all the different resources that are available. So you can look for that. We'll once we do that, I'll try to make sure we link it in the show notes. And if not, you can reach out and bug me about that. But hopefully this is helpful for everyone listening. Thank you, John and Karen, for all that you do for people in our community, for helping seniors. And I hope this is helpful to someone, at least one person, hopefully many people who can be aware of what's available. We're always happy to make those connections for you if you need it. So thank you both, and thank you all for listening. And if you know someone who does need help, whether or not they're selling their home, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to make those connections, and you can share this episode too. That might be a way to help. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.